Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. Good to have you with us. It's been another rough start to the week for George Soros-sponsored DA Alvin Bragg and his show trial. Michael Cohen back on the stand yesterday, where he admitted under oath that he stole money from the Trump organization. Cohen said he was sent $50,000 to pay a pollster, and instead of paying the $50,000, Cohen paid him $20,000 and kept $30,000 for himself. Now, in the eyes of most all of us, that is stealing, straight up stealing. But if you ask Lawrence O'Donnell of MSNBC, he'll tell you that was a bonus that Michael Cohen deserved. And I'm not joking. That's what Lawrence O'Donnell is made of. Take a listen.
He asked about the $50,000 that's irrelevant to the $130,000, and that's where he very effectively got Michael Cohen to agree that, yes, he stole $30,000. Later, when Cohen was asked about that on redirect by the prosecution, it didn't really sound like stealing $30,000. It sounded a lot like Michael Cohen doing the little that he could within that calculation to rebalance the bonus he thought he deserved, and it still came out as less than the bonus he thought he deserved and the bonus he'd gotten the year before.
Only on MSNBC do you get a defense of a crook like Cohen. Cohen was also not shying away from the fact he's a pathological liar. He was asked by Trump attorney Todd Blanche about a statement he had previously made in which he said he would lie to a jury if it were to affect his personal life. Cohen said flat out he stands by that statement and would lie to a jury. Cohen also told Blanche he has a financial interest in the outcome of this case and is mulling a run for Congress. This stuff is beyond pathological. It's almost like scripted for Hollywood, where pathological people, well, they just do very well there. And the International Criminal Court, you've heard of them in The Hague, they've issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for crimes against the Hamas terrorists. You can't make this up either. Puppet President Joe Biden says the United States fundamentally rejects the ICC's effort to issue arrest warrants for Netanyahu or any senior Israeli official. Netanyahu says the warrants are a moral outrage of historic proportions and that Israel has a right to defend itself.
The outrageous decision by the ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, to seek arrest warrants against the democratically elected leaders of Israel is a moral outrage of historic proportions. It will cast an everlasting mark of shame on the international court. Israel is waging a just war against Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization that perpetrated the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Hamas massacred 1,200 Jews, raped Jewish women, burned Jewish babies, took hundreds hostage. Now, in the face of these horrors, Mr. Khan creates a twisted and false moral equivalence between the leaders of Israel and the henchmen of Hamas. This is like creating a moral equivalence after September 11th between President Bush and Osama bin Laden, or during World War II between FDR and Hitler. What a travesty of justice, what a disgrace. The prosecutor's absurd charges against me and Israel's defense minister are merely an attempt to deny Israel the basic right of self-defense.
Well, to take up all of this and the latest out of Iran, we asked foreign policy expert Walid Phares to join us to break it all down. Joining us now, Walid Phares. And Walid, let me turn to the death of Raisi in Iran, in fog in the mountainous area. Do you believe it was an accident? Pure and simple.
Lou, it could be. So there are two options. Option one is that there was a mechanical failure and it collapsed. Option number two is that somebody actually played with the engine or with other parts of the small helicopter, and then that became actually an accident. But the suspicion is the fact that this is a passage between mountains. Helicopters, planes have been taking that route for many, many months and years, and they know exactly what are the angles to use or when not to go. And then there could be the other aspect of somebody told them you can go, and while the situation is really dire. But the most important point is that this is a convoy of 3 helicopters, and they were accompanying the 3rd helicopter in the center. And then now that helicopter goes down and the 2 copters continue like this. They don't go back and circle around. So the Iranians had to spend about nine hours to find them. But all of that will be resolved one day. I don't think the Iranian Islamic Republic is going to give us that information. But that is against a backdrop, Lou. And the backdrop is a struggle that everybody in Iran knew about between the office of the presidency, Raisi, and then the highest offices in the Islamic Republic, it's Khamenei. And what was it about? About struggle for power. Khamenei, who is getting much, much older and he's sick as well, wanted his son, Khamenei Jr., to become the president. So that would actually allow us to think that this may have been a struggle within the Islamic Republic.
And to the degree that that this is the case, what are the next few weeks to look like? If this is an open power struggle, what happens?
Here's the problem. Raisi was in a position as a president to talk to whomever he wanted. So he was already at a certain altitude. He even thought that he could be speaking with some units of the army. He's not doing a revolution. He's just concentrating powers in his hands. Now, Lou, let me say it first time now today on broadcast. There is so much money in Iran. We're talking about $150 billion, and you're the top man on analysis of the financial world. That is going by itself to generate struggle. Who's going to be in control of that money, huge money? Raisi or the next Ayatollah, which may have prompted this. Now that Raisi is dead, was killed or not, we don't know. It's going to be a Islamic Republic on steroids for the next, 48 days. They're going to be normal. They're going to have a transition. And then the elections, and you know how the elections work in Iran. They will create those elections. And then when that happens, you're going to have an alignment between the presidency and between the top Islamic job. And that country, that government, that regime will be on steroid against us, against Israel, against the Iranian population. And by the time they know that the Biden administration is not going to do anything between now, at least in January, the end of January of 2025. That's the problem.
And how long will it take to see that settle? Or how many weeks or months do you think it will take for Iran to sort of settle where they're going to go? The Ayatollahs, who will be their choice? What will be the election? When will the election be?
They have 50 days for the election, so it's running. The clock is running at this point in time, so I do not expect that they're going to do something dramatic between now and the election that would not be to their advantage. But there's going to be a convergence between two things. Very difficult to say it, but that's how I see it. Number one, to consolidate their power, grab all these positions, make sure that the Revolutionary Guard is in their pockets. They will promise them money. But second, that we in the United States with this weak administration are heading towards our elections, so we become very weak in terms of foreign policy. We are already weak. We'll become mega weak as we get closer. And Lou, God knows what this administration and their supporters are preparing for these elections. We had a huge example in 2020. So the United States won't be in a position really between now and early November to do much on foreign policy. This is the time where I feel that the next regime in Iran will do whatever it wants to do in the region, even here at home in the United States, if they wish so.
So, in their spectacle of Europe sending their condolences to Tehran, I mean, over the death of the butcher of Tehran himself, Raisi, and this look, it's got a peculiar look and sense to it. People are just sort of leaders, European leaders in particular, falling all over themselves. Is Europe really that weak? I don't know, subservient at this point to the threats of Iran, to Russia? I mean, what else could they do?
They are way beyond that, Lou. Europe as institutions has fallen to what? To the billions of dollars they have been actually contracting or as a transaction with the Iran regime. Do we think then when the West sends $150 billion to the Islamic Republic, that they're going to put it at the service of the middle class. And no, there are brokers, and those brokers are sometimes seen, sometimes unseen behind the executive powers. They make 10%, count with me, that's $15 billion over the past few years. You could establish the mother of all lobbies with that. And then when, as you said, we look at these officials of the EU or others, and even our State Department, being so concerned about, the loss of the president, and they are eulogizing him as he's a major leader in the region. That is exactly the map we need to see. I was speaking with members of families of hostages inside Iranian jails, Islamic Republic jails, and they were telling me that shows who has been impacted, who has been influenced. We have a real map of those who issued those statements in Europe and in the United States, who must have been, I think, have been influenced by the Iran deal and its dividends.
Yeah, it's outrageous, and we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, I'd like to get your views about what in the world the International Criminal Court at The Hague is doing. Why has it been so emboldened that it would go after Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, and the top Hamas leaders as well? Who do these people think they are? We'll be talking with Walid Phares about that and much more. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next.
We're back. We're talking now with Dr. Walid Phares. And Walid, this international court going after Benjamin Netanyahu is fascinating to me. It's a United Nations adjunct, if you will, and it is really delusional. It is also where the Hague is also where the special counsel Jack Smith used to hang out. Doing what and why was he there to begin with? But now they've decided that they have apparently sufficient military power to go out and arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. Who are these fools, and what should we do about them?
Well, that's one of the problems, major problems that international institutions have been facing, the influence of the radicals around the world, again, including the influence of the Iran deal money, are all over the place, not just in courts, in media, in academia. We've seen what they've been doing in this nation. But where were those judges or that council, with all due respect, when Assad of Syria killed more than 450,000 people? Where? Why are they not talking about Darfur's genocide? Just last year, hundreds of thousands of Black, Sudanese, members of tribes have been killed by militias, by jihadi militias. Not a word from the ICC. What happened to them when all these executions in Iran have been taking place and people tortured? This is not really a judiciary decision. This is basically like saying in 2001, we are going to indict George Bush on the one hand, and of course the head of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden. That is crazy. That decision is crazy. It shows that our international law, the institutions of our international law, have been politicized, unfortunately, to a point where a very strange decision is to bring in the leaders of Israel, a democratic nation, and to compare them with the heads of terrorist Hamas. This is unseen, unheard of.
Yeah, unheard of. Is it time to bulldoze the United Nations building on the east side of Manhattan?
There are two ways of thinking about it. Some people, they lost hope in all institutions and want to do some political bulldozing. Some other people, I belong to that other wing, that say, no, we're going to go in. We're going to actually go in with the new administration. There's going to be change in Latin America, change in Europe, and that new international community needs to absolutely reform and push back against those radicals' influences across the board, not just at the UN, but anything UN affiliated. I mean, look at those humanitarian agencies in Gaza or in Lebanon with Hezbollah. They're filled with actual members of the jihadist organization. So there are two ways to look at it. If you have hope, you go in, you reform it. If you don't have hope, then your option would be the last one.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the bulldozer group without any question. But let's go to Europe. Mourning the death of a terrorist, one of the leaders of a state sponsor, the world's greatest state sponsor of terrorism. What kind of game is it that the Europeans are playing, and why don't we make much of it? Because it's really, to me, both irrational and frankly morally bankrupt of them to do so.
I would go, Lou, with the morally dimension, because it seems that after Reconstruction, what has been happening, it's really about money and financial interests. As I said, you're the expert on this. When you have so many billions that goes to the regime, so much money that the Taliban have now, or other Islamists and jihadists, or even, of course, you have China and Russia, it's a different story. But that money becomes an international fund to influence these institutions, these governments, and these are actually financial interests behind the government. They're having business in Iran. You have all these companies in Europe that are completely doing business with the Iran regime. And therefore, obviously, they can put pressure on their politicians. They could put pressure on the executives, on the members of the legislatures, and ask them to give importance and celebrity status to the fallen, to the president of that regime, who has been, as you just said a few minutes ago, responsible for the execution of tens of thousands of Iranian citizens, men, females, kids, and elderly over the years. So this is unthinkable, another unthinkable matter that has been done by these institutions, unfortunately.
And let's turn to the Chinese now, and the network that that's been revealed between China, the CCP, and these various pro-Hamas groups that are demonstrating, rioting all across America. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, the actual organizers of the riots or the jihads or the intifadas that have been happening on our campuses from sea to shining sea are the supporters of the Islamic Republic. But the Islamic Republic has a strategic agreement with China, with the government of China. 2 years ago, they signed an agreement, billions of dollars, that China will provide them with, protection and support and buy their oil and all of that. So you have a cooperation between the two. Those who have the people on the ground are mostly the jihadists, the Iranians and others, and those who have the cash, go to China, the big bank, where we have our trillions of dollars, as we all know. So that's how it works. But all of that is coming as a result of the weakness that we have in Washington. This did not happen under the previous, President Trump, not even under the President Bush at the time. So when these radical forces basically feel that there is a sort of a weakness in the center or an influence that could, push back against what the administration wants to see happening, then that's what they do.
Walid Phares, we're talking with Dr. Walid Phares. We're talking next about, we're going to talk about what's the CIA doing and what is their latest round of activities in the Middle East. And let's take a look at North Africa as well. Central Africa, too. We'll be right back with Dr. Walid Phares. Stay with us.
Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next.
We're back with Dr. Walid Phares. And Walid, let me ask you, the CIA involvement right now in the Middle East, how concentrated is it? We've seen William Burns lead the efforts to create a ceasefire. It's odd that the CIA director would be the one to be doing that rather than the Secretary of State or an ambassador or an emissary from state. Your thoughts about what that means symbolically to the Middle East, all parties, whether it be Israel, whether it be Iran, whomever. What does it mean for the United States to put William Burns into the head of the talks on a ceasefire?
That's a great question, Lou. Very few people understand how the Middle East perceives it, why actually those regimes would like to sit down with the head of our intelligence agencies and not with our diplomat, because that's the Middle Eastern thing. You know, when you use the term mukhabarat, intelligence of security agencies in the Middle East, people say, well, that's really where decisions are made. That's not the case in liberal democracies or Western democracies. The problem is, at this point in time, is that those agencies that we have, which should also inform Congress about everything's happening, are given instructions by the teams who are working with the executive. So if the team that is working basically on the Iran dossier, the Iran deal dossier, that team would influence the president that this is the right way to do it. And that team most likely is the one who says, well, if you want to send a real message, you don't send the State Department, you send the CIA. But that's dangerous for the CIA to be politicized, because then they are uncovering who they are, who are their friends, so on and so forth. And that's dangerous also for our allies on the ground, and dangerous also for our constitutional order. We are clearly separating the powers, but when you ask one of these agencies that is supposed to be secretive and not public to become public in negotiations instead of the State Department, or the other way around. If you ask the other agencies like the diplomacy agencies to do secret work, then we're going to have the same results. I think that has to be reformed, that has to be reorganized, and that has to be corrected.
And as we wrap up here, Walid, give us your sense of just how much disruption, instability you expect between now and Election Day, and assuming that President Trump is elected and can restore that stability, can restore, if you will, domestically law and order, and some sort of stability to the international gathering of countries and communities.
Well, number two, let me visit number two. A Trump administration or a different administration that would change the policies, foreign policies of the United States and national security policies of the United States is a must. I even say if this administration in the last 10 years of its life, before the elections, will change, I'm for it. But they're not going to change because the interests are so large. So a second or another administration that could be at this point in time, it's decided would be headed by President Trump, is needed in the region. We need to reestablish the Abraham Accord. We need to actually contain the Iran Islamic regime. We need to stop the war in Ukraine. We need a long list, but he needs that other administration coming, needs also the best people to help them and people who are loyal to these goals. That was not the case in 2017 to 2020. Having said that, I would say the real concern is not what would a next Trump administration do. It's the bridge to get there. I still have concern. That's not my field, but I've seen and lived through 2020. I have a concern that there could be a lot of instabilities before getting to the elections, and some instability from the elections to have an administration for the reasons that all of us know. It's like this opposition, this radical opposition for any alternative to the Obama-Biden policies.
Right. And as you say, there's no doubt we are watching the third term of Barack Obama in this hapless, inept Biden regime, a puppet only, and his masters unwaveringly Marxist, and they mean to destroy this country without any question whatsoever. That's a question that has to be confronted first by Donald Trump. And I think we're truly at an existential demarcation in this November 5th election. I don't believe there will be another election if President Trump were to be denied election again. Your thoughts on that?
He has to win, and I think the numbers now shows. I remember in all previous elections since I became an American citizen, you would know more or less where the numbers are going. And those numbers are becoming more dramatic for both sides. So what is it that's going to come like between now and November and change these numbers other than some super natural political thing, which will be pressure applied of the kind of demonstrations, of the kind of political guerrilla that took place in the summer of 2020, and at the heels of the intifadas that took place. I am very concerned that some force is going to use these intifada, jihadi, Hamas forces to disturb our elections. That's my real concern at this point in time.
And it's one that I happen to share as well. Walid Phares, good to see you. Appreciate it, and look forward to our next conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks to Walid, and thanks everybody for being with us today. Be sure to join us tomorrow for the Great America Show. Our guest will be Just the News, John Solomon. And be sure to follow me on Twitter and Truth Social at Lou Dobbs, and on Facebook and Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. Be sure to join us each and every weeknight for Lou Dobbs Tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, on Frank's Speech, Roku, Rumble, and X. Thanks, everybody. God bless you, and may God bless America.